Good morning and welcome to the Anfield Leadership Series interview program. Today we're excited to speak with Mark Evans, who is the Senior Director of Corporate Development for Viega. Thanks for contributing today, Mark, and great to see you again.
Great to see you, Barry. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem at all. I'd like to start if you could just provide a quick overview of your current role and company and give us a sense of some of the leadership roles that you have or have had recently.
So my current role as Senior Director of Corporate Development is a strategic position, basically looking for emerging trends in the industry and the opportunity to either mitigate things that are a risk to our core business or to develop opportunities that allow us to enhance our market leading position.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Mark. Let's jump into it, shall we?
Awesome. So in terms of leadership roles, I've had roles everything from line management all the way through to senior leadership roles, companies that range in size from, small regional to international firms, and matrixed organizations where it was both a combination of third-party representation, independent manufacturers, representatives, along with factory direct and sort of everything in between. In terms of scale, up to an organization that was pushing 200 people that were either direct or indirect under my leadership.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I'd like to begin with having you describe to the audience, what does the word leadership mean to you?
I would say leadership means, it's not one word. It's maybe an amalgam, but obligation is probably the best way to sort of capture that. I think you have an obligation to yourself to be happy. You have an obligation to others to make them successful, whether that's individuals or the company. You obviously have an obligation to the customers that are served by your team, by your company, by your product. And so accepting that obligation, being true to that, and having integrity, I think that's what leadership means to me, that you're willing to accept and meet those obligations.
Oh, great start. I do enjoy that answer. What would you say are some of the important values that you demonstrate as a leader?
I think, there are a few words that come to mind, but empathy is probably a big word. It's funny, as I look back as to who I was as a leader 30 years ago, as to who I am as a leader now, my style has definitely changed.
Right.
And the reason and the thing that allowed me to make that change was a growth in empathy, to really understand and care about where the other person was coming from and finding ways to try and help support them. I think also honesty. Like some people they use the word transparency, but really being transparent doesn't necessarily mean that you're honest. So it kind of comes back to that integrity piece. So I think, to me, those are the two things that are really important, are understanding people and being genuine.
Okay. That's good. Thinking about others who are at maybe an earlier stage of their career or have identified the opportunity in their own minds to be better leaders, what few key characteristics do you feel are essential outside of what you've already mentioned for someone aspiring to become an effective leader?
I think that they have to have a really good understanding of themselves. So the ability or the willingness to be sort of introspective and conduct some level of self-analysis, understand from, and the word gets used, or the term gets used often, emotional intelligence, but understanding how they think about things and how that will appear to others is key. And then be a good follower, right? If you're always intent on leading and never intent on following, you're going to be, creating a pile of dead bodies behind you. Right. So understand what it is to be a good follower. Hopefully you have the opportunity to follow someone who is a good leader, is a good boss, is a good mentor. You'll learn a lot of things that will help you along the way.
No, I think that's excellent advice. A lot of that resonated with me. Switching to sort of formal leadership training, can you tell us about some formal training you've been fortunate enough to attend during your career? What did you find most beneficial and some of the key takeaways?
So I was, very fortunate along the way to have access to some really good programs. Probably the first that was really impactful was the opportunity to attend training on the Xerox campus in Virginia.
Right.
That was, was a residential program. Again, fairly short in duration, but very intense. It was focused mainly on sales process, but it turned out to be a lot of leadership. And it's where I recognized, system selling has many different iterations. But at the end of the day, that process also taught me a little bit about change management and how to potentially look at sales as a change management process and then bring that over into the leadership.
Right.
Right. How do you help someone get from one place to another
Right.
in their journey towards, being an effective leader? I also had the opportunity to go through a program at Frank Barton School at Wichita State University. Again, fortunate to be able to go through a program at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. So that was pretty cool to be part of an Ivy League institution, and then a little bit later to go through a program at the Schulich School of Business at York University in Canada here. So that was also a very cool experience and really relevant to the particular industry that I'm in because it was organized by the leading industry organization. So good program.
Well, it's interesting. My takeaway from that is, and similar to myself, right? That foundational training that you gained at a much earlier time in your career never leaves you.
Correct.
And it forms the basis of who you are. And I was very impressed with the ability to see the attachment to one solution, but then utilize it, whether it be from a product to a customer, but ultimately over to a human being. My other key takeaway there is you're always learning. For a gentleman who's had, a long-standing successful career in the industry that you're in, I heard three other key elements, and I'm sure that's not all of them, of the fact that learning is continuous and you're never done with that learning curve. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because you get to a certain point in your life or your career, and it's easy to sort of stop and look back and take the glory lap. But for myself, if you want to lead something, you have to be able to take that knowledge and apply it to a future situation. So being the person in the room as a leader who's, saying, hey, that's not the way that we do it, or that's not the way that it was done in the past, that's not helping anybody grow. You need to be able to take what you have and help and apply it to a future situation that person is going to lead or manage or whatever. So context from the past helps to guide vision for the future. And that's, I'm still every day learning new things and taking life because of it.
No, that's fantastic. That's true. Turning back to teams that you've led and the ones that you're involved in now, what sort of leader would you say that your teams would describe you as, if I were to ask them?
I would say transformational. And I say that because whether it was, individual effort in my career or leading a team, it's always been part of a growth journey, right? So whether it was very specific to driving sales of a particular product within a region, or it was sales enablement and sales effectiveness growth within a team, always change, right? And so understanding how to get from A to B, but wanting to be a part of that journey, whether it was, just as a team member or as leading that, yeah, transformational. And then I think also, there's a very different skill set as a leader or a manager. Those are two, they're words that get used to describe the same thing, but to me, they're very different.
How would you describe what if I were to say what's the one fundamental difference between the two? What would you say it is?
That leaders create, managers optimize, right? If you give someone an existing process and say, make it better, that's a manager. If you give someone a situation and say, create a solution, that's a leader.
I'm pausing to digest that. That was very well said.
Yeah.
Excellent. So how would you, Mark Evans, define your communication style, and what do you feel are some of the benefits of that approach?
So I think again, looking back at who I was some time ago and who I am now, it's become different. I was very much aggressive, self-confident, committed to my point of view, damn the torpedoes and let's move forward. I think now I've become assertive, but not aggressive. Having learned that lesson about empathy and maybe subscribing to a bit more of a servant leadership approach where, understanding how to make other people successful while still having vision and still, being committed to what that vision is, but allowing myself to be more open to, input and direction.
Okay, that's a lot of growth. Congratulations.
Took
Just
a
a
long
couple
time.
more. If I were to say, ask Mark, what would you say is your greatest strength or your superpower, if you will, compared to others?
So the one word I don't think really gives it um, like full benefit, but vision, right? Understanding how things are related and where to pull from to make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. I don't know if that really comes across, but you see people, especially now, there's been so much, technological evolution and change from the time when I started, when the fax machine was brand new, to the point where what's a fax machine? A lot of things have changed, but specialist knowledge has become so much a part of our world every day. People know one thing really well, then they're expert at it. I've never been one of those people. At any point in that technological journey, I've never been one of those people. But I've always been curious about all of those things. So I learned enough about them to be able to say, well, we're going to take this piece here and this piece here and bring those together to help solve a problem up here.
Okay.
And that sort of generalist knowledge has really benefited me in my career, but it's also provided me the opportunity to remain relevant. Okay. Right? Because I am never going to be one of those specialist knowledge experts.
Sure.
But having, a broad range of experience, that understanding of how to apply the specialist knowledge, I think is key.
Right. Know just enough to be considered dangerous, it seems.
Yeah, to yourself or others. Yeah.
Excellent. So, speaking of others, coming through the pipe and wanting to become leaders that are looking, whether they're leaders today, whether they're managers today, but, thinking of them to try and become more effective, what advice would you give them? What impact on themselves, the teams they lead, the results they earn, do you believe effective leadership can actually have?
That's a really big question. So
that's why we end
yeah, that's a good one to end on. I think I'll kind of touch back on something that I said earlier, that understanding of change management and that process. It is a discipline. Like I went through and I got certification in change management to be able to understand that differently and better. Am I going to be a change management professional and work as a specialist within a firm to do that? No, but I think it allowed me to understand many things in a different way. So as someone who wants to be a leader, you're going to have to change people. You're going to have to bring them on a journey, like whether it's changing processes within your company from legacy to something new. People are going to resist change. Understanding the process of how to take them from one place to another is important. I think also someone's personal journey, how do you help them get from where they are to where they want to be? That too is a process. So that would be the first thing, is you want to be a leader, understand change management as it applies in the context of your business objectives and your team and their growth. The other thing, and this is a result of one of those programs that I was able to participate in, a great professor at York University who touched on emotional intelligence and what that really means. So understanding your communication style, you asked me that question, what kind of a communicator am I? In my case, I'm assertive. Understanding how other people perceive you helps you to be able to get a result. Sure. Right? If they're resisting your communication style.
Well, if you don't know oneself, and you also don't know, and it can be beneficial to know the styles of your other team members, you're going to know that you don't have to be, there's no such thing as a one-trick pony to solve in one certain way. Each right. individual on your team needs a different element of your capability to identify to their style that works best for them, not just necessarily you.
Yeah. And so, I think through all of this, a lot of the things that I've read, a lot of the things that I've learned, at some point I would have said, that's all good, but, right? Because there was that pragmatic aspect to me as a person, to me as a leader, that considered some of that to be fluff.
Right.
It's not, right? It took a long time to learn that, is that you will always find value in things. You may not take away 100% value in every minute that you invested in it, but you will learn something that you will be able to apply.
Right. No, I think that is excellent advice. If I think about, people that I've seen struggle with leadership and others that I've seen gel with leadership, your comment around change management certainly resonated with me. And, emotional intelligence, to your point, I think there's far too many companies out in the world who are always focused on hard skill. And the fact that people call things that you've just described as being critical to your evolution and journey fall into that unfortunate category of quote unquote soft skill. They don't tend to get the same type of importance associated to them.
Right.
And ironically, to your other comment about being a generalist, knowing a little bit about a lot of things to be dangerous and never going to be the subject matter expert, maybe the subject matter expert doesn't necessarily need a whole lot of soft skill depending on their goals and aspirations. But I think from my takeaway from this conversation is the generalist absolutely needs to consider soft skills as being as, if not more important, to help them in their journey along the path.
Right. I mean, how do you bring that specialist who, may be disruptive to the team, but the skills are necessary, the knowledge is necessary? How do you as a leader integrate that? Leading sometimes means managing conflict. Mm-hmm. You have to understand how to manage that conflict in a way that not only diffuses the situation, but takes you further towards a result. So that, definitely comes back again to having an understanding of who your team is, take time to learn about them. Like, I think COVID taught people how to be much better communicators because we relied so much on being in a room with someone and reading their body language and the nuances of expression that you got from sitting in the room with them. Having remote meetings changed how people communicate, and it forced them to be like verbally and in the writing skills better communicators,
Right.
because you couldn't rely on that sort of innate signal coming to you. It had to be something that you said, and so I think we've benefited from that.
Well, it's nice to see that we can pull little elements out of a very challenging period in our lives to know that we've learned something valuable, and then how to utilize it in what we define as the post-COVID era. That's great. That's great advice.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this back on you just for a minute.
Sure.
As you asked me what my superpower was, I want to ask you, what do you see as your superpower?
Great question. This interview series is supposed to be all about my guests, but I appreciate the question. I would say for me, it is emotional commitment. And what I mean by that is, the reason I've chosen to go down this journey after being quote unquote in the corporate world for as long as I've been, it's really about connecting with people in their time of need, whether they've recognized the need yet, or whether some of these conversations and information that I'm sharing helps them come to that realization that they recognize that need. I and you and others have been on that journey of self-awareness and improvement, but there is that sort of moment in time where you come to the realization of self-awareness to say, I can be better, or I need to do something more because this doesn't feel like it's all of me. And when a person comes to that realization, it's an exceptionally emotional time when you're going through that discovery phase. So I think for me, it's being able to recognize that in somebody, help someone come to that awareness themselves, and then partner with them to really dig into why did they get there and what is it that they're hoping to accomplish, and then how do we begin sort of that journey of adding elements and building blocks, some of the specifics you mentioned, like change management and emotional intelligence and understanding. And there's lots of tools out there, some that I work with, to understand self better, but also understand your team dynamic better. And I think it's very self-fulfilling, but the trust you have to place in somebody else to guide you along that journey is so challenging to do. The acknowledgement is hard, but to offer trust out to somebody else without knowing where that journey is going to take you takes a lot. So for me, I think being able to emotionally connect as my superpower to what fears and risks that person is taking and wants to take is really where I enjoy being. And I think I do a reasonably good job of it.
I would sum it up by saying that your superpower is success. And I say that because if based on my own experience of having worked with you and seen what you brought to that situation for your company and for your team, you helped everyone in that circle, whether it was vendor partners on the outside, team members on the inside, customers. You helped everyone find the best possible level of success for whatever it was. And it's based on, your ability to understand people, to ask insightful questions, and, be able to really know what they would see as success in that circumstance and help them fulfill that. So I wish you all the best in this journey, because I know that you're going to help a lot of people find success, whether it's in career transition, personal growth, whatever challenge they bring to the table, you'll help them find success.
Well, thank you for turning the last 5 minutes of the interview on me. It's purpose, but I certainly do appreciate that. In wrapping up, I'd just like to take a chance to thank Mark for joining us today. I believe we're able to learn a lot about your leadership style and how others may benefit from the advice you've offered and the journey you've undertaken. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it greatly, as you know.
Appreciate the opportunity, and thanks again, Barry, for the invitation.
All right. For everybody watching, these interviews are available on our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and search Anfield Leadership Series. Join us next time for another insightful interview on the challenging subject of effective leadership. Thanks for watching and have a great day.